Hey y'all, it's Sarah. While I had my rusty color paints out, I wanted to go ahead and knock out another quick project that I wanted to do, and so I thought maybe you guys might want to tag along with this one. It's really simple. It's more paint technique than anything. So I'm taking this Dollar Tree yard stake sign, this metal one. I've already used my heat gun and pulled the sticker off, and I'm going to come in just a few inches down, probably about, I guess that was around 4 or 5 inches. These things are pretty sturdy and secure, so it might take you a couple tries. I've got it pinched. I'm going to try to help break it. There we go. So now that I've got that cut down, I'm going to turn that into a stand. So I want to grab something, and I'm not sure if this is going to be strong enough. We're going to find out. I want to bend this back, and I'm holding it down at that base so I don't end up pulling it apart from this back side. And I need to bend it just a little bit more. And however you want it to tilt, just bend it to suit you. You can have it come up a little higher. And I'll tweak mine a little bit. I'm going to pause and go spray paint this in my silver metallic. Doesn't matter what brand. I find that they're all fairly equal. We're covering most of that anyway. I'm going to do the entire thing. And then we'll come back and I'll show you what else I'm doing with this. Okay, so I have this whole thing painted out metallic silver. I'm not real partial to a brand on my metallic spray paints because they all seem to cover fairly well. I think it has something to do with the metallic flakes that are in most of them. So I seem to have good luck with just about any of them that I've ever tried. This is my results. So the next thing I'm going to do is real similar to doing the rust finish on the windmill. I'm going to come in, and I'm not going to go for a galvanized look. I'm just going for an aged metal look. So I'm dipping just a wedge sponge into some black paint. This is just apple barrel acrylic black paint. And I'm going to kind of rub that on there. And then I'm going to rub some of that off. Can you see what that does? I'm going to go all the way around. I'm not too worried about this center part because I'm going to be painting that with some chalkboard paint. I might have should have done my stand last. So if you're watching this and decide to do this, bend your stand up after you've painted it. It'll make it easier for you. So I'm just kind of aging and distressing it a little all the way around. Not letting that paint sit on there too long before I buff it back out. I want to get down in these little crevices and kind of swirly parts pretty good there. Give some nice shadow to that. Maybe a little up my little spring part here. And I'm not rubbing it off quite as much on my leaf. It almost makes it just like a slight shade darker. So now there's some kind of visual variety there between the pumpkin and the leaf. So I did this one last year. I ended up really loving it. I kept it on my counter and wrote on it. So I want one for both ends of my islands. So it's kind of a repetitive craft for me, but after having one last year, I kind of wanted a matching set. As soon as I saw these this year, I got excited because by the time I decided last year that I wanted a matching set, I could not find any more of these little pumpkin signs. Because I kept mine out through all of fall, into the Halloween season, and all the way up to Thanksgiving. So just for the sake of consistency, especially since I'm putting mine on my island, I'm doing front and back. Because for me, you'll actually see front and back. You don't have to do this if you're going to have yours backed up against something. Ooh, can you see all that patina down in there? So you could do the galvanized look if you really wanted to. And that's kind of the look where you sponge on multiple shades of gray over one another, and then kind of topping it off with sponging on some white. This is just a little bit different look. You could do one each way if you really wanted to, so it looked like you had two different metals there. So same thing on this one. I'm gonna rub it on the leaf, and I'm not going to rub as much of it off, so that even on the back side the leaf is slightly darker. Okay, and there you go. You can kind of see how that worked out. I'm going to adjust that a little bit so I can get these last little spots of this leaf. So if you haven't seen my other rust video, I'll tell you really quick what colors ranges that I'll be using. You do not have to specifically use these colors. You are going to want to be in this color range. And by that, I mean something fairly close to it, but it doesn't have to be exactly what I'm using to get the look to work for you and be believable. So I'm just kind of blending that down into this area so I don't have any shiny spots when I go to paint my chalkboard in. I feel like that edge down in there still kind of wants to be a little shiny on me. And if you get to a point where you accidentally put too much or you feel like it's too dark, just take a wet paper towel and rub a little of it off. So the color range that I'm going to be using is just a brown. This is just a normal brown. It does not have any kind of red undertones to it. It is just a very neutral brown color. This is burnt umber. I have the big bottle of it because I use this color a lot. I do find it to be a very brown. I'm going to be using this dark red color. This leans more towards maroon. And to me, the maroons have kind of the orangish red undertones. And like burgundies have a purplish undertone. So this has more of the orangish red undertone. And then I've got this color called Pueblo, which is in the orange range. So basically you need a good brown, a deep red, and a good orange. You can also throw in a little bit of this Waverly Pumpkin. This is a really bright orange, but you can tip these edges really nicely and get an interesting effect with that really bright orange. Okay. Sorry, I want to get into the painting part. This is my favorite part. So, just continuing to use my same sponge. All I'm going to do is come in with some scissors and just kind of nip that off. I'm making this a very easy to do one. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to start darker to light. I'm going to tap in some of this brown. Now, you can give this a very interesting look, like it has started to chip and break down, that it's starting to flake apart. And I show this in another video, a really long version of getting this kind of paint look, but I wanted to show it on something other than foam core. So you can kind of see how that looks. It's real similar to how people like to do the enamelware kind of look. But this is given the concept that the metal has started to break down and deteriorate. It's going on really dark. It doesn't have a spongy look at all. It just kind of has a blotchy look. And you can do a lot or a little. Come in and tip maybe a couple of these leaf edges. So back to my brown. Now that I know where my dark color is going to be. Now I'm not doing these in a spongy looking texture. I am doing this in a blotchy kind of texture. And I'm piling these colors up so that I can layer them on top of one another. And they're going to give a little bit of that actual rust texture, along with blending out really nicely together and seeing the layers through one another, since we're using it so thinly. So I'm mixing a little bit of the orange and red to get a deeper orange. You can start to see where that is really making its appearance. You can go as heavy or as light on this as you want. I'm not going nearly as heavy as I did with my windmill. I do want to show you a couple little tricks. So I'm going to kind of dab my sponge off a little, make sure it's not super heavy loaded. Still has some of that orangey red color. So let me find a spot that doesn't have paint on it yet. I'm going to swirl that in a little. And you're going to start to see that it looks like faded out rust. And I really want to do it on my leaf. And I'm going to bring it to the front. It's kind of pinned towards the back, and I want it to get some attention. So I'm going to kind of swirl around on here. And then buff some of that out. You can kind of see how that looks. I feel like I want a little up here by my stem. I would think that would be a natural place. I did this with a really large metal pumpkin, an outdoor one. It had faded. It was orange. And I did a set with that one, another one I had, and one of these guys, and just left it plain. This one I'm going to put a chalkboard on. But it ended up being a really nice way to revamp some ones that I'd had for years, and they had gotten sun bleached. And now the wear and tear on them, that look works for it. So I think this is really as far as I'm going to take this. Like I said, I wasn't going to go super rusty on this one like I did with my windmill. Maybe on my spring. I think my spring needs a little rust there too. So the last thing I'm going to do, I wanted to test out, I got this chalkboard paint from the Dollar Tree. The really cool thing is, if you turn it over and look, this is made by Plaid, which is the same ones that make Waverly. So what I'm going to do is, my Waverly ink is really, really dark. I'm going to end up using that first. Actually, you know what? Let me not do that. I want to really give this chalkboard paint a shot, and I want you guys to see it with me. Usually I do the ink color underneath anything that I'm doing chalkboard paint with, and it gives it a really rich black base coat before you do your chalkboard paint, so you're not using as much of your more expensive chalkboard paint. But this was $1. I'm going to try it with this sponge just to see how this goes on. That's not bad, guys. It's really not bad. Usually I do this with a paintbrush, and normally I would have put the Waverly under it or an acrylic paint base and just saved some of my chalkboard paint. But I really wanted to see what this paint will do. Obviously it's going to need more than one coat, but had I used one of the others, anyway, they too were going to need more than one coat. I'm going to put a really light coat with the sponge. Probably going to have to go back over it with my brush to get really a clean look. But this isn't bad at all, really, from what I expected. It's using the sponge, I will say, is giving me some really good precision around these edges. So that's a plus. So it does look like it's going to need 2 coats for sure. But I'm not really unimpressed. I have some that was bought at a hardware store, and it applies really strange, which is why I usually do a base coat under it. It almost has like a blue kind of film over it when it applies. I have a weird spot here on my pumpkin. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. When you go to look for a pumpkin, if you want to do one of these, kind of flip it over on the back and see if it's going to have that. That's probably going to line up weird. Fortunately, it's closer to the edge, but it does line up on what's going to be my chalkboard part. And I never thought to look. I didn't have that problem when I did this last year, but that one just happened to have those little ripples in it. Well, you can tell when I'm focusing, I suddenly get really quiet. Getting focused around those edges. This does allow me to get really clean into those, though. I will say that. I'm not having to worry about bristles going astray on me. I have not read the directions on this. I'm assuming it takes a couple coats. It usually does. Normally they go up and you have to do one up and down and then one side to side. This one doesn't actually say. Most of the ones that I've played with, they'll tell you to do one layer up and down and then do the next layer side to side. This one doesn't tell you have to do that, so I'm not going to worry about doing it. Got a little out of line on that. And that's a very easy fix. Just going to run that sponge back down. Buff that little bit out. So it will need another coat to get a nice coverage. So while I'm waiting for that to dry a little bit, let me pull my fan out. And let it blow in there. And I've got a couple of embellishments. Ooh, got a little blob here that I don't want it to dry. You know, for a Dollar Tree product, this seems to be, for a Dollar Tree carried paint, this seems to be going on really nice. So, I've got a few things to play with. I've got some gingham / buffalo check ribbon. I've got, this is not real raffia. This is off of one of those Dollar Tree hula skirts. But if you can't get your hands on raffia, this is a really nice substitute. I wanted to show you a little trick. I have to turn this off. I know there's a lot of people that struggle with bows, and bows can kind of give some folks a fit. Now this is just like a simple shoelace bow, the way you would kind of tie your shoe. But I wanted to show like a little cheat on that if you struggle. And sometimes I have to cheat. I have rheumatoid arthritis. And if my hands are giving me a hard time, I'm going to try to find a way to cheat as much as I can. So I'm going to tie my bow pretty much like you would tie one. Before I pull anything, I'm going to go ahead and stick these two markers right there. So they're down in there. That's going to allow me to pull this really tight, really even. It's going to allow me to pull the loops upwards, the streamers downwards. And then I've got a really tight, perfectly even loops on each side. And you just kind of fluff it up a little. And the cool thing is that you can make really small ones this way. I'm going to slide those back in and pull these down. Whoops. So you could end up with cute little tiny ones that way that are nice and tight and perfectly even. Or just pull them tight at an even pressure. And there you go. That was really kind of not truly necessary, but I know some people, bows kind of are their crafting bane. So that was just kind of a little cheater cheat. So I don't know how long I want my little streamers on this yet. But the first thing I'm going to do is pull out my hot glue, and I'm just going to tack this down on my stem. And I'm going to leave my streamers long because I'm going to want to have to flip those when I go to put this second layer of the chalkboard paint on here. And I grabbed 2 bows that I had made already. I keep a lot of small bows like this because of my paper piecing. They work really cute in my little critters' hair and stuff. So I hadn't decided if I was going to use the big one or the small one, but I think I'm going to go with the small one. that in place just right on top of that raffia one, or that fake raffia. I'm not sure what this is. It's almost like a paper material. I'm not sure if it's a natural material or what. It definitely kind of has that whole raffia vibe though. So while my bow is drying in place, I can come back in and start on my next layer of chalkboard paint. Now remember, I said this is chalkboard paint, which is different than chalk paint. Chalk paint is just a thicker, heavier pigmented paint, where chalkboard paint allows you to turn something into a working, writable chalkboard. I've seen that question asked before. So there is a difference. Well, I'm going to have to glue that back on. There is a difference. However, if you're not worried about erasing it and you want that look, you can always just use chalk paint, write on it with real chalk. Sometimes you can erase it, sometimes you cannot. But this kind of should help me be able to erase it and make this really usable. Last year I used it for my dinner menus. Or I would put little notes on it. But mostly I had just our little dinner meal plans I would write on it and leave it sitting on the counter. It was really cute. And it's really lightweight too. So it's not too much in your way. You can kind of just slide it over. And you can see that second coat. I still may even put a third. That second coat really, really jumped in there and darkened that color. I kind of got out of line a little bit. This little sponge has got a pretty nice edge to clean that up, so keep that in mind. This is the first time I've ever painted kind of that way fully across something that size with just the sponge. It worked out pretty nice. I don't have a whole lot of globs or anything like that. So now I can attach my bow correctly. And sometimes it does take a little extra glue. You might want to use some something stronger. It's kind of hit or miss sometimes gluing things to metal. This metal has been spray painted, so I'm not sure if that's going to make it any harder. You could have just tied it around there too. And it should be stuck, and there you go. I will probably cut those a little shorter. And maybe one more coat. I don't know, that looks pretty dark. I mean, once it dries, it's drying at a different timing at the moment. But it may be fine with just those two coats, so that's good to know. I'm pretty impressed with that for it being a Dollar Tree product. I'm not surprised. I mean, it's plaid, so it should be a good paint, but it's better than what I expected coming from the Dollar Tree. I may have to test out some of their other paints now. And I just trim that down, and there you go. How cute is that? And I'm probably going to go in and rust a little of the backside too. I think I may. I don't want to set it down right now, but there you go. There is a cute little... And this works all the way through the season. This works all the way through fall. You could leave this out for Thanksgiving. All the way up to that point. Halloween. All the way through the season, I think this absolutely works. I hope you like this. This was just something that I really wanted to go ahead and do because I was looking forward to having a matching set this year. So maybe it inspires you to try a little something. If it does, be sure to hop over to the Peppermint Cactus Facebook group and share it because we pretty much all love that. So go over there and share it if you try it. Or if you try something else, go over and share it, because we all do really enjoy seeing the projects. I really look forward to that every morning. So if you do, jump over there. There's a giveaway in the group right now, and it's running through August 24th. So check that out. Sign up, do the thing, do the catch, and hopefully win a little goodie bag. I think that's all I wanted to share. Yeah, I'm not missing anything. Go sign up, jump on there, try to get you free goodies, and I'm going to get back to crafting.